So, Austin, this is just going to be a short conversation, and people have asked me this all the time, and they ask me, why are Americans so friendly? Why do Americans like talk to strangers in situations that Japanese never would? Like we were talking about during lunch, how like at the cash register in America, sometimes people say, "Oh, I like your shirt," or "How's your day going?" And you'll have a little bit of a chat, and that never happens here. Why? 皆さんこんにちは、アーサーです。今日は僕の友達オースティンとアメリカ人はなぜ知らない人に話しかけるのかっていうテーマで話した会話をシェアします。この会話はですね、100% リアル、台本なしの自然な会話です。だからこそレッスンでは学べない生の英語を体験できます。IU-Connect やこのチャンネルを通して僕は本当に英語を話せるようになる方法を届けたいと思っています。そのための第一歩はリアルな英語にたくさん触れること、楽しいトピックで自然な英語を聞きながらあなたも話せる英語に近づいていくことですね。And that's why we're doing this video. それでは早速始めましょう。
Well, I mean, that's a hard question to answer, but I think in general, I think part of American culture is constantly measuring people.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is I think you can gauge if a person's a threat or a friend just by talking to them a little bit, right?
Okay.
So I think a lot of people will strike up conversation with somebody just to kind of like see who they are. Like, are you someone that like I can feel safe around?
Yeah.
And so you'll get that. You'll get another thing is I think Americans are very opinionated and like we almost feel like an uncontrollable urge to tell people our opinions.
Yeah, what we think about that, right? It's not almost feel. We definitely feel.
It just like bubbles up. It's like, oh, I like that. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's really common in America for someone to just be like, dude, I like that.
Yeah.
That's a really cool shirt.
Yeah.
Or, you know, that phone looks really cool. Like, that's such a common thing that you'll experience in the US.
Yeah, I remember. So like the thing that really made me think about this was, so by the way, where I'm from in Massachusetts, no one talks to strangers. We're like my mom's from the South.
Are you guys Americans?
No. We're
always hear these
We're
things.
jerks. We're just mean people. But it's so cold, we don't want to open our mouths anymore, you know? No, but so my mom's from South Carolina in the South where everyone's super friendly, Southern hospitality. And she, like, when we lived in Boston, I mean, they still do there, but when I lived with them, like almost on a daily basis, she would just be like, people here are so rude. No one talks to. I feel so lonely.
Yeah, I would feel the same way.
I know, but then when we went to Seattle, Seattle is famous for the Seattle chill where you don't talk to people so much.
Yeah.
She went, see, friendly people. I feel like I'm at home now because people like say things, you know?
I feel like I can kind of see where both guys are coming from, but I feel like the Seattle chill comes from like wanting to look cool.
Okay. Like, so you're interested, but you don't want to feel interested.
People are snooty in Seattle.
Okay, I get that.
You know what I mean?
You don't want to let on that you're interested.
But they're still really friendly, I would say. Like, But yeah, I think like especially the deep South in the United States. I mean, that place is like world famous for hospitality and friendliness.
Yeah. Well, it's like if you don't say hi or have a short conversation with strangers, you're seen as rude almost.
It's like confrontational level of rude.
I know.
Right? It's like, what? What do you do you not think of me as a human?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you talk to me?
Yeah.
You know,
I remember so in the town I grew up in Massachusetts by the coast, there was this little like bird nature sanctuary kind of place you could hike, you could walk by.
Yeah.
And we walked by and this guy was walking the other side and he like didn't even look at us. He like made an effort to not make eye contact and look away from us. And after he was right out of earshot, my mom said, see, this is what it's like in the North. People are so rude here. But then in Seattle, like I remember I was on the bus one time and this big guy was sitting across from me. I've never seen him before in my life. And he just said, hey man, that's a really nice shirt.
Yeah.
Where'd you get that shirt?
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is actually an expensive shirt my dad got in London. He's like, yeah, dude, it like sparkles.
Yeah.
It's like really nice.
Yeah.
And like that would never happen in Boston.
Yeah.
But
it's I'll give you another example because you mentioned your parents had like a porch
Yeah.
like outside, and people come talk. And so my parents had property over in Eastern Washington that we would frequently go to, and
Eastern Washington's kind of like farming country a little bit.
Yeah, it's so the middle of America. Once you kind of get over the mountain ranges, there are these like really big flat plateaus, right? And there's really good farm country. And anyway, so we would go over to Eastern Washington in the summer, and there would be people just like doing like a daily walk, especially in the morning or like the early evening.
Yeah.
And they would just walk by, and they would see like we'd be outside doing something, and they'd just walk up to us. Like, we have no idea who they are. Like, we don't even know where they came from. They would just strike up conversation and hang out. Like, we've had these people for dinner sometimes.
Really? Okay.
Like, they were just like, they walked up, and, we started a conversation. Maybe it was like right around dinner time when we're preparing stuff. And it's like, well, you're here. Do you want to stay for dinner?
Yeah.
And I don't think that's an uncommon thing. Probably not so much in the city, but especially once you get out in the countryside in America, like, people just invite you to dinner.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, I don't even know who you are, but you're here, and it's time to eat.
And you're nice. You have a nice conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So I think, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because I talked about how in the Northeast where I'm from, how people don't really talk to strangers, but actually, like you mentioned, now my family moved recently to, albeit a lower income area. It wasn't as snooty. Like, where I live was like where the snooty rich people lived, but now they live in a place that's much less safe. Let's just leave it like that, to the point where, like, if we tell people where my parents live, I'm like, oh yeah, my parents have a house here, they're like, oh, are your parents okay? But what I've noticed though is that they'll be sitting on the porch having a beer, just chatting, and people walking by will that we've never seen these people before, because they live close to the beach.
Yeah.
So a lot of strangers come by, but they'll just sit and talk, and sometimes they've had a beer with them,
Yeah.
And it's like this kind of level of openness that you don't really see here.
Yeah. I'll give you another example that's kind of different from what we've said. So when I was down in the military in California, for a brief period of, I would say, about 6 months, I was staying over weekends at my buddy's place in where Snoop Dogg's from.
I don't know.
Why am I not remembering? It's right next to Compton.
Long Beach, California.
God, my brain just stopped working. So my buddy had this like really nice apartment in Long Beach, and I liked staying over there because it was like right next to the beach, and we could kind of like hang out and just go do stuff on the weekends. And so I would stay there, and in this apartment complex, I mean, it was like a pretty big. There was probably 50 people living there, right? But on the weekends, they would constantly have block parties.
Yeah.
Right. And I think these are more popular in like lower income areas.
Yeah.
But yeah, we got block parties where people just like open up their apartment doors. You can kind of wander into other people's apartments. I had no idea who any of these people were.
Yeah.
But you just was like, hey, we're all living here. So
yeah,
here's my apartment. Come in, have some drinks.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I think it kind of goes to like, in the States, you really have like a culture of inviting people to your home. When you want to get to know someone, you invite them to your home.
Yeah.
Whereas in Japan, you don't really do that. And so for you as like someone who's used to that, and then you move here, like how did you acclimate to the culture here?
I had a really hard time because I constantly invited my coworkers to come to my apartment.
Did they give you a weird look?
Dude, there were so many uncomfortable situations. Like, I remember there was this girl that I was friends with at my old school. This is a while back. And I was just like, hey, why don't you come over, and we'll have dinner and stuff, and like, I'm thinking about inviting some other people. And she's just like,
yeah,
I'm okay.
Yeah.
And it like didn't even occur to me until later, like when I kind of learned how how it is in Japan, and it's like, oh, that came off really creepy.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, but I kept inviting coworkers. Like, I invited my male coworkers over too. I'm like, dude, just come over and we'll have some drinks and chill. And it's like, no, we don't do that. We just go to an izakaya.
Yeah.
It's like, why then?
Yeah, dude, I really miss I really miss home parties.
I miss it too.
I used to do it all the time when I was in college. Not like the crazy parties, but just invite people to the house. And, you know, that's here, like you always have to go out to like an izakaya or to a restaurant somewhere and you get like a kosu ryori.
Yeah.
And it's always, there's a time limit and it just feels like so structured.
I love izakaya. I'm not going to complain about it, but I think structured is the thing that I have the biggest problem with it because you know what? Sometimes I just want to lay on the floor with a beer and just talk for like 2 hours.
Yeah.
And maybe not even eat anything.
Yeah.
And just chill.
Yeah.
But it's like you can't do that in izakaya,
Yeah.
right? You have to order stuff. There's people you don't know around. There's all this noise.
Yeah.
And it's like sometimes I don't want that. I just want to relax with somebody. Right?
Okay. Yeah, you know, it's that's something that, you know, if I still kind of miss, you know, every once in a while, and I understand why people are not really used to that here because, you know, the houses are much smaller, more cramped and whatever, but yeah, I don't know. For me personally, though, you know, as someone who I'm so busy and I don't have much like seishin tekina yoyu, I don't have very much bandwidth for making new friends and stuff. Living here is great because people ignore me and it's wonderful. But then when people like my sister come over or whatever, a lot of foreigners when they come here, they're like, oh, it's so lonely. No one talks to you. How do you do that?
You know, I feel like there's just some people who are just naturally good at making friends.
Yeah.
And
they all live in the States.
Well, no, I feel like I am. Like I have never in my life have I ever thought I'm lonely and I can't make friends.
Yeah.
Like it just happens.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to brag, but it's like it's so hard for me to relate to people when they say I can't make friends and I'm like literally just talk to somebody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it gets frustrating and
I know.
I feel bad because I just can't connect with it.
Well, it's tough because I feel like in the States, you know, people are more proactive in reaching out to you. Like sometimes people talk to me here, but people in the States talk to me a lot more. You know, it's just easier to talk. But yeah, I want to kind of wrap this up by asking you, like, what's in the States? Do you have any like memorable experience of like when a stranger talked to you and like anything interesting happened?
Okay. So, do you have one? Because I need to think about this for a second.
So I remember, there were a couple of things. So one was, I was at a Starbucks near Logan Airport in Boston, and I had like a Japanese sticker on my computer, and the Japanese guy who like is a big networker, business guy, he saw that, he started talking with me. At that time we exchanged Facebook. And that was kind of like we had a connection with Japan. But other than that, I remember I was on the Green Line in Boston, just going into the city. And this guy standing next to me, he's just like, yeah, it's a really hot day. It's getting really hot, isn't it? I'm like, yeah, it is. He's like, yeah, are you from around here? And just like this guy just starts randomly talking to me. And at first I'm thinking like, what's this guy's angle? What is he trying to get at me? But he was just a nice guy who's a businessman who's like networking and stuff. And like, we had a nice conversation. I realized he didn't have an agenda, so we had a nice conversation. Yeah, I'm like, oh, I live in this area, you know. And he gave me his business card, and we exchanged emails a couple times. But yeah, it's just like really casual connections like that, you know.
Okay, I just had one that I remembered. So this was when I was in SeaTac Airport. I had actually already moved to Japan, and I was on my way back from visiting my family. And so I was sitting around waiting for my flight, like right outside the gate. And this big guy with like a really long beard and this kind of like jean jacket on. And he's like carrying this big case. Yeah. And there's like all these other like kind of guys that look similar to him are just like looking out at the window and like looking at the plane. And I was just standing here. And so about 5 minutes goes by, and all of a sudden the guy just like turns to me and he's like, "Are you on this plane?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Where is this going? And he's just like, "We're super excited." And I'm like, "Well, why is that?" He's like, "Well, this is the first time we're flying internationally." And I'm like, "Okay, that's cool. Yeah, great. Why are you including me in this?" Yeah. You know, and obviously I didn't say that, but
that's what we're thinking.
And so like I strike up conversation with this, or they strike up conversation with me, I should say. And so we're talking, and eventually I learned that these guys are a local metal band from Seattle.
Yeah.
Right? And so they've been playing in this band, and I apologize, but I forgot the name. But yeah, they're a local metal band. They've gotten popular enough that they've secured a venue in Japan.
Really? Okay.
Right?
Cool.
And so they're going over to do like a tour in Japan, and they're all excited because this is like their first exposure to like the international scene. And so it was just like a really wholesome conversation where it's just like, these guys are super hyped. Yeah. They've never been to, they don't know anything about Japan, but they're just like, we're so excited. This is going to be so cool. And so like, you know, they were asking me about like, you know, what Japanese culture is like. And, you know, I was kind of explaining to them. It was just a fun conversation.
Yeah.
And then I never saw them again.
Yeah, you know, it's funny how it's like, you know, at first you're like, oh, I'm tired. Why are you talking to me? But then it ends up being like this nice, heartwarming experience that, you know, you keep with yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of wish they did that a little bit more here.
Yeah.
Alright, 最後までご覧いただきありがとうございます。英語が話したら自分の世界、自分の可能性が広がるなと思って英語を勉強している方が多いのですが、いきなり外国人の対面するってなると頭が真っ白になって言葉が出てこないです。その方のためにこのチャンネル、この活動を始めました。I love Japan and I've decided to call Japan my home. And I want more Japanese people to share the great parts of Japan with the world. 僕自身も日本語を4年間勉強したのに、実際に日本に行ったら全く話せなくて本当に悔しい経験をしました。フレーズや文法を学んだし知ってるはずなのに、こういう問題があるのは英語の知識はあるけれど実際に話す感覚がないからです。そこでより多くの方がその実際に話す感覚を身につけられるように世界とつながる英会話メソッドを開発して無料動画講座でシェアしています。このメソッドに興味がある方はぜひこちらをタップするか、概要欄にあるリンクをタップするか、こちらの QR コードをスキャンしてご利用ください。As always, enjoy your English adventures. これからも一緒に世界とつながりましょう。See you next time!